Welcome back to another episode of Always Another Game. Today we're going inside the mind of my first fellow ice hockey athlete. You are taking my ice hockey podcast virginity here. Ladies and gentlemen, we have ex-professional and international ice hockey player, current business owner, Danny Meyers. Danny, how is it going?
It's good, buddy. Great to jump on the show. I love what you're doing. So I'm excited to talk today.
Yeah, so not only is Danny a friend, he's a fellow teammate, and he's also a previous arch nemesis as well. So I don't know if you ever knew that part.
That's but isn't that part of a hockey player's journey? Like, you kind of had these guys that you hate to play against, and then maybe a season or 2 seasons down the road, your teammates, and then you have that awkward kind of like 5 minutes when you first see each other. And then after about 10 minutes, you're like, wow, this guy's really cool. And then within like an hour, you're like best friends. I had a funny situation where I played with a guy that we actually fought on the ice the previous season. And we were teammates, like pretty close afterwards. And it's just weird from fighting a guy on the ice to then now I'm sticking up for him on the ice, and now I'm going, for coffee with him, and we're talking about our families. It's one of the many wonderful things that ice hockey brings.
That's one thing I never got my head around, because that's why I said arch nemesis, because that was the one reason you used to get under my skin, because I never really understood it. Like, for me, if you're fighting somebody, you don't like that person. That's how I thought about it. Yet you knew a way to get under my skin. And I think that was because I didn't expect it from you. I expected it from other people. I wasn't mad. I was just disappointed. But you always found a way to kind of drag me in. And I remember a couple of times I'd get a penalty and you just look at me and just like, well, yeah, I knew what I was doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, that comes with, obviously, I was older than you and a little bit of experience. And, when I consider the battles that I had against players, often they were my best friends. A very, very close friend of mine, who I actually go and see now every summer. I go over to America to see him. Like, we fought each other, which was quite bizarre was when I fought Joe Greener.
Yeah.
And we kind of it comes up a lot because certainly here at Ozone, like when the kids come and like they type into YouTube, put my name in there, like that fight often comes up. Okay. And so they're kind of like, oh, that was a really great fight against that guy. And I was like, yeah, he's actually one of my best friends. Weird, but yeah, I mean, that was when I was, regardless of what jersey I was wearing or who my teammates were, when I was committed to playing on that team, I was committed to that team. So I would do whatever it would take to win that game. And I kind of, now that I have 2 boys and I have an older one who's now, he's 16 now and he's playing for Great Britain, and he's got, what looks to be hopefully a very successful career ahead of him. One of the things I speak about a lot, actually, more than skills, is kind of his mindset. And he's an incredibly nice boy. Very, 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 very well liked by a lot of people. But I said to him, like, in order to get ahead in sport, like you do have to have a little bit of spite about you. And I call it a character. You have how you are off the ice, and then you play a character on the ice, which you can switch off from because you need to when you come off the ice. You can't be carrying around how you are on the ice, off the ice. And it was, I like to think that I'm a kind person. I'm respectful towards others. But when I'm on the ice, I want to win. And that's kind of a lot of the stuff that I'm working on with him, more so than, his shot or his skating. It's just his mindset of when's the time to turn it on and when it's not. And I know there were times that you were wound up by me, but it was I was just doing what I had to do for my team. And you know, I thought we were just going to smile afterwards. You were a little bit angry at times afterwards, so I just kind of let you be. But
I took some
that's
things
hockey.
home with me. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you know, you talk about you know, last little bit, but one of my favorite games actually was and you talk about the team and togetherness, was actually, I think it was Vinny Zavoral who hurt you, put your shoulder out or something like that. And the next game we played where you were back, you saw the real element of what kind of a team takes and got their back, because not only did, I think you maybe fought him last, but he had to go through Greener and Nicky Chin first too. You know, this guy kind of got his comeuppance for putting your shoulder out. And I think that kind of sums up exactly what the team environment is like in ice hockey, that you do have each other's backs. That's where the most successful teams, you know, occur.
And the one thing to add to that is obviously in the league, in that league, like you had Slough, you had Basingstoke, you had Guildford, you had Bracknell, all within half an hour of each other. Like they were big rivalries, you know. So in, you know, when I left the Elite League and I played against you again in the EPL, obviously you were in Basingstoke, I was in Guildford. Two big rivalries. Like my mindset going into that Basingstoke, every time that we played you guys in Basingstoke, is what I really respected about your team is that you had a lot of team toughness. You were a team. You could see that from a mile away. Like you really backed each other up. And I was always going into that game going, this is going to be a long night, but they're going to try and they're going to, I know they're going to finish their hit on me. I know that I'm probably going to get chirped from the bench where they're going to try and kind of get me off my game. But then my response was, I'm not going to take a step back. So I'm going to meet them in the middle. And that obviously leads to some confrontations and stuff like that. But how I played against you and how I played against Basingstoke, it was actually out of respect that I had for you guys, that I liked the challenge of playing against your team. I really enjoyed those games. They were tough games. I felt I was emotionally engaged in those games. Certainly playing against someone like you, like, you know, I would, if I'm kind of, you know, being hard on a player, it's because I respect them. Like if I'm not saying anything to you, it's because I'm not worried about you. You know, so you were really good with, you were really good in the corners on spinning me. You were very like cute around the net with your movement. And so for me, I'm going, right, I'm not going to give him the space that he wants. I'm going to play as hard as I can on him around the net. I'm going to try and push him out of the house as much as possible. So obviously what could be perceived as me, you know, being a bit of a a-hole, I'm actually showing you the greatest respect that I can show you, because I'm saying, I think you're a really good hockey player. I'm going to have to do whatever I can to stop you. So it's funny how, like, once you kind of, you what looks like something on first glance of, oh, he's an idiot, why is he playing like that? Actually, when you strip it all back, it was me showing you the ultimate respect. And that's kind of the twos and fro's of hockey, because, you know, for people that like yourself and current and former hockey players, like, we call it the game within the game. It's the game that we know of, the mental warfare, and then there's the game that the people watch from the stands. So you've got to win that mental warfare, and those are all kind of the pieces that make ice hockey what I personally believe the greatest sport in the world, because there is so many layers of things that need to go your way in order for your team to be successful, as opposed to just scoring more goals than the other team. There's a history of how, there's a backlog of how that goal is actually scored. You know, when I do video review now, if I see a score a goal or concede a goal, like, I'm winding the video back 30 seconds. Where did this start 30 seconds ago? You know, was there a misassignment on the forecheck? You know, did someone not pick up their man? Was it a bad line change? Did we turn over the puck in a certain place? What was the coverage like defensively? Did we pick up sticks? Should we have pushed the guy wide because he was on his offhand? Like, there's so many things that go into it. The goal is the goal. I don't even look at the goal in the end. It's all the build up beforehand.
Yeah, and I'd love, you've mentioned a few times when you said you were talking to your boys about this kind of like this split personality, and you keep saying, you know, the game within the game, and that goes further than sport, because a lot of top people in the world, you look at Queen Bee, Beyonce, she has this persona, which, you know, when you talk to her, you know, you hear the stories of her away from it. That's not who she is. And I can't remember the actual term, but it is very normal in life to have these split personalities. And I think being an athlete, you have to find a different edge, because you might have heard of some people, oh, well, that kid's just too nice. They play too nice. That isn't going to lead to success. You have to play and live, even in business and life. You've got to play with a bit of an edge to be successful. Doesn't mean you have to be an idiot and disliked, but
it's you just spoke about business there. Obviously now I'm a businessman, and so one of the things I had to do when coming from a sporting environment into a business environment was find out what translates and what doesn't. So I found out pretty quickly, not that I did it, but obviously in ice hockey, if you have a disagreement, you can fight, which you can't really do. You can't have a physical fight in the business area. So that's one thing I was like, well, I guess I can't do that. We should
bring it in.
Sometimes it'd be nice if you could. But just trying to find out what translated over. And there was an enormous amount of similarities. And then there was also an enormous amount of similarities with regards to, you know, the business that I have here, what was initially, you know, born from the ground upwards, and we're now 3 years in. How I emotionally controlled myself through it all. I learned a lot in that first year with my emotional control. How my staff feed off my moods. Learning to be calm in the middle of the storm. You know, when you're starting out a business, and whoever's listened to this will completely understand this. Like it starts off with an enormous amount of hope and excitement, and then reality hits, and then you are quickly kind of at times feeling like you're on a ship in extremely stormy waters, and how do you steady that ship? Yeah. And so that was a lot that I need to figure out. You know, we talk in, you know, referring back to a hockey game, you know, if you stood behind a bench and listened to the talk, if a team concedes a goal or two, like someone will always shout, "We're okay here, boys. We're okay." You know, like you're trying to calm
who that person is as well.
Everything that's going on. Yeah, just your. And then you also have the person that's freaking out, just going absolutely berserk. And it's the same when it comes to business. You know, when I opened the rink on May the 4th, 2021, like 3 people walked through the door. That ain't going to pay the bills. You know, like that's not paying. That's not really paying my toilet paper kind of bill. And so what, you know, you like naturally I was super excited to open everything up, and you just think everything's going to go great, and it doesn't. It really, really doesn't. So learning certainly that first, I'll probably say 2 years of how to control my emotions, how to be patient for something to grow, how to be decisive when you need to potentially take a program out, trying to keep the belief, trying to stay the course, keep working on making things better, and then also making sure that you're allocating your time in the right place. So one of the things, for instance, I was guilty of in the first year was I was doing everything. I was, you know, I was coaching, I was sorting out the rink side, I was sorting out the hockey side, I was, you know, speaking with staff, I was up in the bar serving coffees, I was with the Hoover cleaning the floors. And when I was able to, I mean, some of it I needed to do, but then once I was able to kind of take a step back, I started leading this business a lot better, and I started making way better decisions. And then off the back of that, then you find out, you know, a lot about your staff, and then you were able to empower your staff, which is a really, really big thing.
Yeah.
Because then you start getting more buy-in. And then, you know, we're 3 years in now. So the great thing I can do, so for instance, even early this morning, I was going through our projected revenue, and what's great is that I can look back on the previous 2 years, so I can start seeing trends. So for some reason or another, I don't know why, public skates aren't particularly popular on a bank holiday Monday. I don't know why.
Okay. Yeah.
So we'll put hockey in, because I know that hockey people will come whenever. So that will always be like a tournament day, for instance.
Yeah.
You know, I know when public skates start to get busy, it's generally around November. Its peak is in February because of Dancing on Ice. I know that it starts to tail off around May. So then now I need to start thinking, okay, so how do I sort out June, July, August schedule? You know, birthday parties are extremely popular right now. But in the summer, they're not particularly popular because people go out to fields, or they go to, I don't know, like a theme park or something, and people are on holiday. So just being able to look back on trends is so important for me in order to project moving forwards. Those are all the things that you don't, when you're doing your business plan, for the most part, you're always thinking about the success, and you kind of at times, and you won't, unless you go through it, you don't realize it. You don't really think about the bad stuff.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because you've gone from professional international player who just had to show up and focus on your game, and now you're the GM, right? You're the GM, you're the coach, you're the kit guy. You know, so you've kind of gone through into that, you know, the whole team style scenario, which, you know, again, you probably would have seen it, you know, being within a club and seeing how people operate and things like that. But you mentioned a few times, you know, how you managed it early on. And I remember coming in early and you were being forced home by your staff and your friends. You were being forced home. And I think I even said to you, I said, man, go home, get some sleep. Like you were right in. Where did the change come from? How long did that last, where you just felt like it had to be you?
I think when it got to a stage where I was about a year in, and I was like, there was a moment where I was like, I kind of sat myself down and I was like, okay, I need to remember why I'd done this in the first place. Like, what was the reasons why I'd done this? What was the motivation behind all of this? And so that you kind of get that enthusiasm and love back again, because the first year you are just surviving. You are just surviving. You know, you're constantly looking at the cash flow. You're seeing everything that goes wrong and not necessarily everything that goes right. So unbeknown to me, like, I was concentrating on all the bad things, and so I wasn't even enjoying any of the success. And you know, obviously, where Ozone is today is that it's highly successful. But I was having success in that first year, but I couldn't see it because I was looking at all the bad things. And the best thing I'd done, I stopped looking at the cash flow. I stopped looking at the money, because the motivation was never about money. The motivation was to make a difference within the British game. The motivation was for me to live my dream. And so when I started taking numbers and money out of it, I became a lot clearer. I became a lot less stressed. I started getting excited about things again. My creative mind started going wild again, like it was. You know, it's funny. I got told when I was building my business plan, and I was speaking to who's gone on to be a business mentor for me, and he said to me, "You will never be as creative as you are right now before it all starts." And the lucky thing I'd done was that all the ideas that I had, I put them all down, not with a view to do them straight away, but to look back, like in a couple of years' time, and go, "Oh, actually, yeah, I remember. I thought that's a really good idea." Because before you get into the midst of it all, your creative mind's going berserk, and then when you kind of get into the day to day, that kind of goes. And so being able to stop looking at the cash flow was huge for me. Trusting my staff and delegating was extremely important, and just coming back to the reason why I done it in the first place. It was never about money.
Yeah, with the cash flow, did you just ignore it, or did you outsource that part?
I ignored it.
Okay.
I didn't even look. To this day, I don't know how much money we have in the bank. I know that we pay our bills. I know that all I know is that no staff members are saying they haven't been paid, and all my creditors are paid up. I don't have any letters coming through saying that the bailiffs are coming in. And quite frankly, that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
And I know. Listen, like my wife runs the accounts. So she knows, and don't get me wrong, like this isn't the back of a fag paper, like it's all properly done, but I choose not to know. Yeah. Now, if there is a situation, so for instance, again, like in my meeting this morning, I'm looking at things, and so right now there's a couple of things I want to do. I want to refurbish our toilets. I want to get new hockey nets. And I want to replace our projector screen into a new screen because I think it will stick out more for our public skaters and it will catch their eye and blah, 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 blah. So I go to my wife and I say, I've calculated everything that I would like to do. This is how much it's going to cost. Am I able to do this? She will then come back and say, yes, you can do this, or maybe you can't do that. I will also go to her and say, long term, this is what I would like to do. So exclusive for your podcast here, I'd like to change our glice into ice.
Okay.
So where the glice are, I want to change that into ice. So that's a long term project. Okay. So this is how much it's going to cost. When are we going to be able to do this? So I'll go to her and say, can I spend some money? And pretty much like at home, really, I guess, with our, can I get a pair of trainers?
How it normally works. Yeah. Can I eat today?
Yeah. So can I get this bottle of water, or do I need to go get tap water? And she would say yes or no. Tap. Yeah, pretty much. Am I able to do this? And she would say yes or no. And then and that is it. And we get so consumed with money. And we often forget what the value of what something can give us emotionally. Right. Yeah. So you're a PT, for instance. So the value that you give to someone, making them feel better about themselves with their body, you can't really, of course, you'll have your price and stuff like that. But really, like the price is the price. But the real value is them changing the lifestyle. It's changing their mindset. It's making them feel better about themselves. It's giving them more energy. And that's pretty much what I've done with Ozone, where when people say Ozone's a success, some might talk about, the fact that we've been here for 3 years. And as I said, I pay my bills on time and everyone gets paid and stuff. The success of Ozone is the fact that more kids get way more ice time here. I lead the country in Learn to Skate courses. I've had the Blind Society here. I've had the Deaf Society here. I've had Scouts, Cubs, Beavers. I have Home Ed. I have SENS. I have a really cool working environment for our people here. I have a brilliant community. The hockey players are way, way better than they were 3 years ago. I've built a platform for hockey players to be successful in the future. That's success. Yeah. So if I turned over a pound, if I made a profit of £1, or if I made a profit of £1 million, it makes zero difference to me with regards to the value that it brings me. Because if I earn £1, or if I earn £1 million, I'm still going to do this job because I love it. Yeah. So the value isn't what I earn from this. The value is what it brings to me and means to me emotionally. That's the value. And I think that's often lost in business.
I think it is. I think you're right there. I deal with a lot more people these days who succeed in business, but not succeed in their health or lifestyle, because we do have a drive for more, and a lot of that is more money. That's our dopamine at work. One of our happy hormones, it chases wins, and we see a financial as the win. And I love what you said there, is that you found the why. Now, the why might be cliche for some people, but it could be your purpose. And once you really understand the deeper reason of why you do something, the money and the finance does become a byproduct. Of course, it's important. We have bills to pay. We've got mouths to feed. It is important, but that's in relative to the value you're providing. So it was great that you found that shift, because I said, when I walked through those doors, I was excited. I was at a phase in my life where I didn't want to be anywhere near hockey, but I was about ready to kind of step back on. And I said to you, I said, are you going to do any any short games? Ozone is a training facility. The ice pad is slightly smaller than your regular ice. So rather than 5-on-5, you play 3-on-3. And you're like, yeah, I was going to do it. I was like, oh, well, are you going to play Meyers? And you're like, no, I don't think I want to play. Yet we look at it now, and all the videos I see, you're in them. You're doing tight turns and all these different stuff. And it's almost like you can't get off the ice now. So what changed there for you from going, no, I'm not going anywhere near this, to now, like, this is your life. This is everything for you?
I think if we take it back to when you spoke about your why. So I earn the same money today as I did with my construction business. So the money's the same.
Yeah.
But I had no self-worth when I was in the construction business and hated my life. So clearly, this is nothing to do with money.
Yeah.
Now, I think I was, like most hockey players, I was listening to Spittin' Chicklets, which is obviously a very popular hockey podcast. And they had Glenn Healy on there. Now, Glenn Healy is a former NHL goalie, renowned for being an extremely funny person and tells a lot of great stories. And when I saw he was on there, I was like, oh, this would be a laugh. What was interesting was the interview went a completely different way to what I thought it was going to. And then he runs the NHL alumni support group. So former athletes from the NHL, he helps them kind of transition through life, because he's obviously realized that leaving a professional sporting environment and going into, quote unquote, the normal world is a really, really tough transition. And I didn't expect the interview to go the way it did, and it was brilliant. And he actually summed something up that, and I listened to it yesterday. So it's had quite a profound effect on me in the last 24 hours. And he summed it up perfectly. And he said, when you finish professional sports, especially if it's a team sport, you feel a detachment. And I was like, that's exactly how I felt. Because when I retired, a lot of my buddies were still playing. And I felt detached because they were still my buddies, but I felt a bit funny about talking to them, because, like, the hockey dressing room is it's a very sacred place, isn't it? Your stall is a very sacred place. So, I didn't like outsiders coming into our dressing room. That was our place. You don't walk in unless you're invited. Yeah. And I always feel funny going into someone else's dressing room. I find it very, very difficult out of respect for, quote unquote, the hockey code. And so you start to feel this detachment where, I can't go in there. Or, like, you want to speak, if the guys are playing, I know that after a game, I need to defuse. And so I'm not really ready to talk to a whole load of people for a while, and then I'll talk. And so you feel like almost like an outsider, and you feel detached from it all. And that's exactly how I felt, like the season would be going on and I wasn't playing, and guys are busy, like, with their season, and you don't want to bother them. And he summed it up absolutely perfectly. And I suppose, coming back to your question with regards to why I didn't want to go on the ice, it's because I still kind of felt that detachment. We as hockey players are, and I know the world is changing with social media and stuff like that, but from my era, and I think it's still true now, but possibly not as true as what it once was it was always team first, and you never put yourself above the team or detach yourself from the team. So social media is you doing something to promote yourself, which I always felt uneasy about.
Yeah.
And so, truth of the matter is when you're building a business now, you need to have social media or you're just going to get left behind. But it always felt really, it didn't sit right with me. And for the first 2 years, we were doing our social media ourselves. And like, I felt uncomfortable holding a camera on my phone and kind of speaking into it. I almost felt like
I
a bit of
remember those
a
videos.
sellout. I felt like a sellout, and it never sat well with me. And then our social media lady, who goes, her name's Robin, she goes by the name Bob, which confuses quite a few people. She started coming on our rec, and then she started wanting to get involved in social media, started doing some social media work with 40 because she was there. And then we kind of got introduced, and then you know, she started going for a bit. She came into my office and started talking about social media plan. And to be honest, I was like, I don't really like it. This makes me feel uneasy.
Yeah.
And then she's like, you know, like, Danny, you are the product. You are the face of this business. Like, people want to hear from you. And when she said, like, people want to hear from you, because you'll notice, like, around this rink, I don't have any of my jerseys up. I refuse to have any of my jerseys up here. I didn't want it about me. And then she said to me, she was like, you know, kids want to know about your career. Kids want to talk to you about hockey. Like, you're not being arrogant by talking about your hockey. You're actually helping people. And that was kind of the first step of me going, okay, maybe I'm looking at this wrong, and maybe I should be on camera. And it took me a long while. And even off the back of that meeting, it took me a long while to get going. Like, recently, I've now got my own Instagram page. I'll stop at Instagram. I'm not doing Facebook or Twitter because I'm not on social media everywhere else. But it was something that just was really, really uneasy for me. So it's something that I had to grow into and have some more confidence about. And so that is how now I'm okay with being on camera. I'd never wanted to make Ozone all about me. But then I realized, like, actually, you know, obviously I am the face of this company, and doing stuff publicly on social media isn't for vanity, because I couldn't get over that. I felt it was vanity. And so the mindset kind of changed there, and I'm still kind of, you know, I still have my, I don't know, Bob, like, you know, we just released coming soon our testing camp, and so we've done some videos of what the testing camp was like, and one of the testing is to do your full speed, and which is a lap of the rink and how quickly you can do it in. So I done it. And she was like, oh, can you do 3 laps, because I need to get different camera angles? And I was like, Bob, like, I'm blowing out my arse here. Like, I can't be doing 3 laps. I'm gonna I'll do 1 lap. I'm gonna take about a 7-minute break, and then I'll do another lap. So I've actually enjoyed it. It's really helped that Bob has held my hand in it and pushed me to do it and take it out of my comfort zone. And off the back of that, like, I've started feeling better about myself, or putting myself out there. And you know what it's like we were professional hockey players. Like, in our head, we are still in our prime. So, like, if I go out and play a 3-on-3 game, my expectations in my head is that, yeah, I'm just going to roll it back 10 years and just do what I used to do. But obviously I can't. And there's a frustration that I can't do what I used to do. So yeah, it was more of a mental warfare that I was having with myself, and which I've managed to break through. Well, continuing to break through. There's still a long way to go.
Yeah, that was funny, because the first 3-on-3 that we did, where it was kind of like the ex-pros of a few of us there, the first shift was hilarious, because I fell over first shift trying to just do a turn behind the net. Lamey fell over. We all fell over first shift, because it's just so different. But you know, when you said there was a detachment there, personally, I struggled with letting go from hockey because I'd done it so long, but I lost a lot of love. Hence why I didn't want to go anywhere near it. That's what kind of drove me away, was the passion element. And you're not going to believe where this piece of advice came from. But it really did stuck with me. It stuck with me when I was wanting to get out of Basingstoke. When we had the team that was really good, really good room. It was a team after Joe and stuff had left. But what he had left in the summer, and I was kind of midway through the season. I wasn't really enjoying it at all. And I called him and I said, look, how did you leave this room? How did you, it's such a good room. How did you leave it? And he said, look, I hear from two of you. I hear from you and I hear from, I think it was Declan Barmer. He said, I haven't had a message from anybody else. And he was then enjoying his time. I think he was loving the room in Hull. And I was kind of like, actually, this is really interesting, because the people that want to keep in touch with me and I want to keep in touch with, you will. And I do. There's a handful of people that, I still hear from and get, messages dropped in. But to kind of step away from that room environment, for me, it's a nice memory. I was talking to my client earlier who plays for Gosport, and I said to him, I said, I don't actually miss the room. It was nice, but I don't miss it anymore. As it kind of time has moved on. So it's interesting to hear like different perspective with athletes and why they kind of moved away. But what was it for you? Because if you were detached, what was it that led you to retire and then not come back?
Well, I mean, so I'd obviously played in Nottingham and Sheffield for a long time. Then my wife Joanna's from Wokingham, so I promised her that we would come home, and I'd achieved everything that I wanted to achieve there. And I'd won the playoffs with Sheffield, and she was like, let's go home. And I was like, you know what? Like, you sacrificed so much for me. Yeah, let's go home. And I still had the best of both worlds. Like, my wife was closer to home, and I could still play hockey. So I signed in Guildford, and then spent 3 seasons in Guildford. And I was going to play one more, and then they announced that they were going up to the Elite League, and I was like, I'm not going back up to the Elite League. That's me done. You get kicked around a lot in hockey. Owners, coaches, situations, fans sometimes. There is a certain amount of bitterness at times. That a certain amount of bitterness that I held for a while with regards to some treatment that I thought was unfair, whether it be towards me or my teammates. And so, it's, for the most part, guys are on their 2 weeks clause on a 1 year contract. I was lucky in a sense that for the most part I was signing 2 year contracts and I had like a 2 month clause, but it's still in the back of your mind that you could get fired. And so, you see 1 minute you're with a teammate, the next minute, he could be your best buddy on the team and he's been fired. And it hurts. Like, there's a lot of pain that you go through. There's a lot of sacrifice, especially when you start a family. I missed a lot from certainly my oldest son, a lot in his life. And so when you play as lot, I played professionally for 18 years. Like, a lot goes on in that 18 years. There's stuff that has happened to me, and like, everyone will have the stuff that's happened to them. And there's some stuff that has happened to me which was really, really wrong. Really, really wrong. And I've always kind of been a guy that kind of stands up to the big bad wolf, which has landed me in trouble before, but that's just the way that I am. And so, like, when I retired, like, there was some of that kicked in, some bitterness towards some owners, more so the owners than anybody else. And so you hold that bitterness for a while. And then for me, I felt the best way to move on from being a hockey player into, quote unquote, the normal world was to completely forget about my hockey career. And what I'd done was basically stripped away everything that I stripped away 29 years of my life. I felt that was the best way. And then by stripping it all away, I realized, what am I then? And it wasn't until I embraced the fact that I was a hockey player and eventually started to appreciate all the good times, because that's your mindset, right? You have a choice of like thinking about the good times or the bad times. and I was in a stage where I was thinking about all the bad things that happened instead of all the
Yeah.
good things that happened, and so that controlled my mind, and so inevitably that then kicks into your mindset and your behavior around other people and your mood swings, and that then leads to just lack of energy, which then leads to not getting out and exercising and sitting on the couch and eating and just basically just doing all the wrong things that we should be doing in life. So it is like it kind of all spirals from there. But the transition into real life only happened when I got hockey back in my life.
Yeah.
And this rink.
But you're quite you have spoken about that phase, because as many people will know Danny Meyers, Nottingham Panthers, Sheffield Steelers, Guildford Flames, etc. Everyone knows that Danny, and a lot of hockey people know Ozone Danny.
Yep.
But that phase in the middle, and you've been quite open in talking about the challenges that you went through, wasn't the same Danny as many sports fans know you.
No, not at all. And I think that's one of the things that I kind of stick up for quite a bit with regards to all professional sportsmen, is like once they're off the sporting field, that like they face the exact same challenges as everybody else. They're just a normal human being. And I think that often gets lost. When I hear people say, "Oh, this player doesn't care," or "this team doesn't care," like they've sacrificed their whole life to get to this moment. Do you think they just turn up on that field or that ice or whatever their sporting event is to not care? Like they still have the same insecurities about themselves. Like you're telling me, like it's funny, like people are like, "Oh, yeah, every day I go to work, I give my best." No, you don't. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You're telling me every single day you're in the best state of mind, whether it be sitting behind a desk or whether it be performing surgery or whatever, you're on construction. You're telling me every day you give your best. No, you don't. You don't. So how do you expect a sportsman to perform at their absolute best all the time? They don't. They have like probably sportsmen more than any other profession. They are constantly analyzing their performance, which has its good and it has its bad.
Yeah.
And the bad is that when you're analyzing your performance, you're stripping away your confidence. So I don't know, you're attest to this. I'm sure there was many weekends where you are just lights out on the Saturday, but for some reason you couldn't get it going on the Sunday. Or you were horrendous on the Sunday and then you're potting 5 the next night. Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
How does that work? It's just, it is what it is, and that's life, and life is a journey and it has its ups and downs, but everyone who has a heartbeat, everyone's the same, regardless of what their profession is.
Yeah. And obviously this time that you had in between your two hockey spells, was a low point for you. You had I listened to the podcast you did with Nick Rothwell. Was a really interesting listen. I'd advise anybody that may be struggling mentally to check it out. But again, mainly for the sake of the podcast, is that you had this low point in your life. What was the changing point to bring yourself back out and allow you to still be here to do what you're doing today?
I allowed the people around me who loved and cared for me to love and care for me instead of pushing them away. Like when my wife, who is the love of my life and is so instrumental in everything that I do, and every day I appreciate her more and more when I look back 20 years ago, 15 years ago, what she done for me that I probably didn't recognize at the start during that time. When I allowed her to help me, everything started to get a lot better, because when you are in a state of mind where you are at a point where you have no self-worth, no self-confidence, you're basically giving up / accepting what your life is, which is what I was. What you don't realize is that there are people around you that really, really care for you. And you have to allow them to care for you instead of being like, "No, I'm fine. leave me alone. I'll figure it out. As a proud man, we often don't want to say, I'm struggling. I actually can't do this by myself. And so when I reluctantly, admittedly, said to my wife, can you just care for me? Which was a really big thing for me, like ego-wise and stuff.
It's massive.
Massive. When I allowed my parents to be my parents again, despite the fact that I was, 36 years old, they're still my parents, regardless. Whether I'm 4 or I'm 36, they're still going to want to be my parents and guide me and support me. When I started allowing people to care for me, like everything changed from there, because I felt like I wasn't alone anymore, and I felt like that people could find answers for me, and the answers that I couldn't find at that time. And it wasn't instant by any means, but it didn't get any worse. And so at those times, a victory was feeling 1% better. And that was a big victory for me, because up until then, I'm getting 5% worse.
Okay.
So to get a 1% win was huge for me. And, I kind of explain it on Nick's podcast. Like, when you say I need help, the kind of support machine starts to get going, and they're not going to give you the answer straight away, and you're not going to feel better straight away. But all of a sudden, now my mum's talking to my parents, and now they're going, all right, this is great, Danny's let us help him, like let's now help him. And then you get a couple of my friends that then get notified, and it's the usual. I had no idea, right? I had no idea it was feeling like this. You mentioned, I remember you text me straight after you listened to the Nick Rothwell podcast, and you're like, dude, like I had no idea you felt like that. Because of course why would you? Because I didn't tell you, did I? Like, I was being an idiot and keeping it to myself. So then like the support machine kicks into gear, and then slowly but surely you kind of get back up on your feet, and you feel less ashamed about yourself. Because I think embarrassment and a shame was a big part of it for me, how I let myself get to that. I'm a very proud family man. I want to make my family proud. And so I felt like I was letting my wife down. It's just the way to, I've got 2 boys. It's just the way that I want my boys to see me. I don't want, what have I done? Like, I'm a terrible father. My boys, I've got a dad that, is, depressed. I'll say it. Depressed. Has lack of confidence, has social anxiety. So then I beat myself up about that, and then I let the embarrassment go, I let the ego go, and I just allowed love and caring into my life. And it's something that I still work on today, all the time. I work on it. I do little things, like if, where I am today is a lot different to where I am, 2 years ago. It's something and I'm proud of myself. Like, I make some pretty good decisions here, and I do it with without getting caught up in all the emotion of it. If something happens here, I tend to I listen, and then I tend to leave it for about 48 hours. I make sure that I get, if it's a dispute or something, I get both sides of the story, and then after about a week, I'll make a decision. And I haven't done this for a while now. Like, if I am getting pent up about something, I'll go for a walk outside the rink here. I'll walk around. I do little things, like I like country music. Like, country music makes me feel better. Stuff like that makes me feel better. I've started to read, and I just bring a calmness to my life now that I didn't previously have. And just experience is so key, right? Like being able to look back at things and go, didn't do the best job of handling that.
But that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to get though, because like where you said there, like bringing the calmness into your life and being open and willing to help. Do you think that was just maturity, or was there something else that occurred?
Certainly maturity, certainly experience, maturity in a sense. Go back to not being too proud and egotistical to ask for advice or to get others. Maturity to listen to people's views on stuff, and it's okay if people don't share the same opinion of me, and that as long as it's put in a respectful way, then that's good. It's healthy. Experience of learning from past mistakes, and then also we live in a different world now. Like, there is a lot more talk of mental health. That wasn't around when we were younger. There is better support now, and then there's also like, I found myself. What I've realized is that I'm an ice rink owner. I'm a hockey coach, but most importantly, like when you're out on the ice, it's more than teaching hockey; it's teaching life skills. So I've embraced the role of supporting people. It was interesting when we done our first hockey camp here. You had like, all the people parents had to fill out a form for their parents. Don't have any allergies, blah 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 blah. And then one of them was, does your child have any special needs? And I would probably say like 40% of the kids that come here have special needs.
Oh wow!
Whether it be dyslexia or ADHD or dyspraxia or whatever it may be. Those things have taught me a lot. Like learning through kids has really, really helped me, because, as I say, there's none of us are the 100% polished human being, right? We all have different things that go on in our life, and the great thing is that there's a lot of support for kids nowadays. There should be more, and that needs to continue. But when I started finding out about these kids and their special needs, because you look at them and they look perfectly fine, right? And they are perfectly fine. With special needs doesn't, for some cases, like you then find out that people like Elon Musk had autism, and so did Leo Messi. Well, they've done all right. They've done okay. And through learning what kids go through and learning the behavioral patterns of the special needs that they have, it forced me to look into myself as well, of why people react certain ways, kids react certain ways. And then I started looking to myself, like, why do I get angry about this, or what is the tipping point for me? So like, when I'm out on the ice and I'll have, between 12 to 14 kids out there, now that I've known them for a long time, like I know if the reason why someone's not paying attention, it might not necessarily because they're being disrespectful, it's because they're overwhelmed with, they might have ADHD, for instance. So like, I'll treat that kid different, as opposed to kind of like, why are you not listening? I'll go over to the kid and be like, hey, just to let you know, this is what we're doing. Okay. I'm not sure if you heard what I said, but this is what we're doing. And, I just need you to do this. And this is what we're working on right now. And it solves it. Whereas I think 5 years ago, I would have been like, Johnny, why not listening?
We got puck shot at us.
Yeah, I used to get puck shot at me. So just stuff like that, like learning through the kids is actually, I've been able to learn about myself and adults as well, like how I deal with adults. Kids are great, man. You can learn so much through kids.
Yeah, but that's the empathy part, isn't it? That you've been able to not only live the hockey life that they're going through now, yet you've had these life challenges, and now you're evolving into this business owner that is the coach, the GM, and you take that empathy and you mature, you become wiser, and you become more understanding of other people's needs. And I feel like a lot in sport growing up, the best coaches were ones that did let you play a little bit, that gave you a bit of freedom, that rather than trying to X's and O's you you know, and kind of structure you. So I think that has a powerful place in sport, is having a coach that can understand the different needs of a player, that you can know, rather than like, okay, well, you're not playing very well today, sit on the bench. Just like, well, hold on 1 second. You're actually normally a, you know, 9 out of 10 player. Let's try and help you get up to 7 and 8. What is it you need from me? I think that's a huge
the main thing that a coach has to do is get the best out of the player.
Mm-hmm.
Full stop. Get the best out of the player. And that will mean that you will treat players differently. And the whole everyone needs to be treated the same. No. That will get you nowhere. You can't just shout at everyone. You can't just mother everyone. Some kids do need like they want that motivation. But the primary thing that a coach is supposed to do is get the best out of a player.
Yeah, for sure. If you could go back and talk to Danny that had retired from hockey, that was struggling, if you could go back to chat to him today from what you know, is there anything you'd particularly say to him, or another player that might be struggling in life after playing?
That despite you feeling the lowest of the low, a lot of good can come out of this. A lot of good can come out of this, and you can learn a lot from this. Like right now, this feels like hell. You know, the Winston Churchill famous saying, "When you go through hell, keep going." At that time, I felt like everything was lost. Listen, unless your heart rate is flatlining, you are alive, and you have a life ahead of you. Like I get phone calls and emails every day of stuff like, man, I can't believe A, I'm talking to this person, or B, they are proposing to do this with me. It's wild being here. You know, we've had Netflix here. Like, I didn't think that was in my business plan. You know, I spoke to I spoke to an elite league club yesterday that called me, and they were asking about my advice on ice plants and how to reduce their electricity bill. I never like what, and then you know, hockey wise, my contacts that I have, you know, over the past 3 weeks, I've spoken to the commissioner of the NCAA, the commission program. I've been at the Youth Olympics. I regularly speak with Colin McDavid's private coach. I spoke with 3 prep schools last week. Like, all of these things were completely unattainable 4 years ago. And just as long as you're breathing, as long as your heart is still beeping, what is today doesn't necessarily is going to be tomorrow. Like there is, you're never done. And, you know, I obviously now as a businessman, I take great inspiration in reading other successful businessmen's journeys and stuff like that. And, you know, hey, like that Colonel Sanders, man, like he was like 70 years old when he done KFC. Like, how wild is that?
There's so many of those stories, though.
There is. My favorite book in the world, and I've read it 3 times, and I recently read it again about 4 months ago, and I'll probably read it again in probably 6 months, is the Phil Knight Shoe Dog book.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, like if you haven't read that book, like read it right now. Like if you are someone that is like everybody else is doing successful except for me, read this book, because I'm a big Nike fan. Like I've always worn Nike. To this day, I still wear Nike. I love Nike. And I had the anticipation of reading that book and reading all the success of Nike. And I'm reading the book, and I get about like halfway through, and this is how good this book is. Everyone knows what's happened with Nike. I get halfway through that book, and I'm like, man, does he get successful? It was so humbling to hear Phil Knight talk about he didn't have a clue what he was doing. Yeah. Not a clue. And I won't ruin the book for anyone if you haven't read it already, but some of the stories, like, if this guy can build Nike to what it is today, we all stand a chance. And it was brilliantly written by him. And in fact, I think it's the last 2 pages that he, I think it's certainly the last chapter and maybe the last 2 pages. He eventually talks about when he puts Nike on the stock market and becomes a millionaire. The last 2 pages. He does a very brief thing on Michael Jordan, when obviously they signed Jordan and you get the Jordan brand. But the whole book was about him being in the basement of his parents' apartment, sending money over to Japan for shoes and waiting 4 months before it came back. Because remember, there's no internet, right?
Yeah.
And it was, and I draw an enormous amount of strength from that book of any time where I'm like, can I do this? Am I good enough to do this? I went to a business convention about 3 months ago, and I was asked to speak. A guy was there representing Dell. And he briefly spoke about the story of Dell, obviously the computer software. And again, like Michael Dell, the owner of Dell, again, you know, in his garage for the first 5-6 years, you know, like, and you're thinking, we often get in today's day and age, we quickly, you know, whether it be, you know, less people are watching full games of sport because they watch the highlights because they want to know the results and they want to see the results. They want to see the goal or whatever it may be. And, you know, you've got people on Instagram, you know, showing off their cash and blah, 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 blah. And so, you know, our brains are being trained to see the results. But what our brains aren't being trained to do is to delve into the reason why that success and all the crap that everyone went through. So, you know, we all see Cristiano Ronaldo now, but what we don't recognize is that Cristiano Ronaldo was homeless and, you know, left home at 11 years old. And was a scrawny little kid and just looked like any other footballer. And so I love delving into the journeys of businessmen, of the initial journey. I'm not really interested in the success.
I think that's how it should be. The success is in the action. That's what we should be rewarded more is the action part of it. So yeah, 100%. Now I'm sick and tired of calling you Danny. So, Mizey, if anybody wants to find out more about you or the Ozone, where can they find you?
So we have our social media platforms. We actually have 2 of them. One is called Ozone Ice Rink, and that's for like the general skaters and the figure skaters and stuff like that. Birthday parties. And then we have Ozone Hockey, which is obviously all about the hockey. We also have 2 websites, again, for the same reason. So we have the Ozone ozonrink.co.uk and ozonehockey.co.uk. I have my own social media channel now, as I kind of mentioned earlier, at Meyers Hockey.
Your personal brand.
Yeah, I know. All right, let's go easy on that. And then I'm doing my own podcast now as well called What's Next Coach, which I really love doing. So I speak to different coaches around the world on their philosophies, and then we've had coaches, skills development coaches, we've had prep school coaches, we've had professional kind of like pro player coaches, we've got NCAA coming up, we've got coaches from Hockey Canada, so we'll have coaches from Europe. So I've really enjoyed that. So that's called What's Next Coach. That's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you ever want to see me, I can guarantee you I'll be at this rink.
Well, if I can give something to you, that you do need to remember that Knight, Musk, and Zuckerberg all have more followers than Nike does, that Tesla does. So the personal branding is very important. So if you're following Phil Knight, he is more followed than Nike is. So
really,
that's your little
wow.
bit there, yeah.
Oh God! All right, so I've got to take over the followers of Ozone. All right, I'll see how that goes.
There we go. And my reminder to anybody else that took anything away from today, please like, share, subscribe. If this just helps just one person, that's all it needs to do. That's all the podcast needs to do. And as Danny found out, and many others, reminder: there is always another game. Thank you, everybody. Cheers, Danny. We'll catch you soon.
Thank you, buddy.